It's no secret that, at least in American popular culture, there's definitely a shift very much so motivated by trends in politics and news. Get Out, the comedic thriller film by Jordan Peele, is a directly inspired film from current social topics of conversation. There have been several films to address socially relevant issues such as racism, but far too often the audiences feel as if they're being talked down to or being hit with an overly sentimental and heavy-handed lecture about how they should improve themselves. Get Out has been released to critical acclaim, and in my own personal opinion, it's not because of the message it carries along with it, but rather the manner in which it pulls off its message. Unlike Crash or other racially charged films of recent, Get Out treats the viewer fairly and allows for the message of the film not to completely take over the experience of the film. Jordan Peele succeeded in making a fun, comedic thriller with a message that lets the viewer enjoy the movie as its own entity before insisting on the social ramifications that it entails. Let's look into a few different aspects of the film in determining why this is not a preachy, teachy, condescending experiment in cinema. First off, let's examine the characters here. The main character is, of course, Chris, a young black man meeting his white girlfriend's parents for the first time. Chris is well-spoken, affable, but suffers from a smoking habit which seems to be his only vice. Rather than overcompensate the hero in this film, Jordan Peele simply makes him likable, but also imperfect. There's no enshrinement of Chris in the film that makes him this virtuous saint that we must sympathize with. He's more so an average Joe being taken out of his social comfort zone, something all of us have faced at some point in our lives. His girlfriend, Rose, is also written well by Peele. She's reassuring to Chris while also understanding his reservations in meeting her family. This makes her likable as well, and not overcompensating her ignorance. She tries to sympathize with his situational anxiety, which makes much of their dialogue come off as very natural, another aspect to admire from Jordan Peele. As for Rose's family, early on Peele does them justice as well. They're friendly, welcoming, and overall sensitive to Chris and his feelings. Again, much of the dialogue here comes off as fairly natural, with a few exceptions that serve for some comic relief, but for the most part, a very natural scenario is put on screen by Jordan Peele. This convergence of the characters allows for the narrative to be fair and balanced, not overcompensating the feelings of one side to make the other seem more virtuous or favorable. Finally, there's Rod, the utter comic relief of the entire film. Rod, played by Lil Rel Howery, represents that inner insecurity that Chris is trying to keep inside of him. Rod is the unfiltered, hilarious subconscious of the film, ready to assume the worst of these kinds of scenarios. Because of this, Rod's scenes are the hilarious kinds of suspicions we often convince ourselves of in dealing with awkward situations. He's also what keeps the overall tone of the movie in check, bringing some good comedy at opportune times. Now let's look at where the film takes its turn in its surrealist suspense. Once Peele allows the setup to address the real-life insecurities that Chris faces, he goes completely into a surrealist brand of suspense. The sinking sequences are a great visual form of suspense and surrealism that will live on in the film for sure, and are perfectly creepy and symbolic of the overall message. From there on out, the suspense comes from Chris's worst fears coming to fruition. Every suspicion he and Rod had going into the scenario are to be affirmed, and then it's shown that this seemingly normal family had some sinister intentions for Chris, and Peele doesn't use any sleight of hand to try to mask this. He makes it very upfront in its surrealism, and then allows us to have fun with the concept and root for Chris in escaping this hellish scenario. It's about that fear of, what if I'm right to be afraid? And then it goes all the way with its concept and practically holds nothing back, which allows for some very interesting and suspenseful sequences to take place, which prove to be fun for the audience. With that said, we're going to close out with admiring the symbolism laid throughout the film. I personally enjoyed this part of the film very much. Peele was stern in using symbolism throughout the film that had layers in its themes. From a deer on the side of the road to Chris's smoking habit causing his nervous twitches and tics, there's definitely a fair amount of symbols laid throughout the film that can call for repeat viewings in order to explore what each symbol may mean from its implication, though some of them may be a little bit more explicit than others. I won't give them all away because there are some that are very thought-provoking. So now we've reached our conclusion and our prognosis. Get Out is not only a film that will get people talking, but it's a great feature debut for Jordan Peele. Though the message is what is getting everyone talking, it never really feels as if Peele is hitting us over the head with a hammer of virtue to make sure we understand the message. I believe that with all films, entertainment should be the first priority, and I think Jordan Peele also believes that. While the film can certainly provide some commentary about the subconscious of African American men, Peele trusts the audience to know that, and instead lets them enjoy the movie for all of its surrealist suspense and comedic set pieces. Because of that respect for the audience, Get Out is a fun and thrilling movie with a premise that will spark people's interests. I would prescribe this to anyone looking for a fresh take on thriller films, and would recommend this as the perfect antidote after watching films such as Crash. But please sound off on your thoughts below and contribute any extra analysis you might want to discuss with this film. Until next time, thank you, subscribe to the channel if you like this review, and give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you later.